Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I was convinced this story was done, but unfortunately my inbox for my email is blowing up right now. So I've got to address the Michigan Zoom driver one more time. Last time I said that, it didn't come out that way. So here's the deal. For those of you who don't know, famous story happened in Michigan recently that a guy who was charged with driving while license suspended attended a Zoom hearing in court while driving. And the judge said, sir, are you driving? And he said, yeah, but I'm pulling into a parking lot right now. I'm at my doctor's. And the judge said, you haven't got a license. You shouldn't be doing that. So that story made the national news, made the international news, and it's one of those things that people are just so shocked by it. The story just seems so odd that the guy would Zoom into a hearing about driving with a license suspended while driving. So I did a video about that. And then a couple of days later, I did a video because somebody, an author at Reason.com, had said the story was fake news. Fake news because it turns out the guy's license shouldn't have been suspended. And went off on this whole story about how, and by the way, the defendant in this story had been telling people that his license had been suspended because he had failed to pay child support. And then he did pay his child support, and that impediment to his license had been removed. So his license should have been reinstated. And that was the story everybody was going with. So there's a second news cycle that got out there. And so I did a follow-up video where I talked about the fact that what was going on most likely was that even if you get your license suspended and then the suspension gets lifted, you've still got to go to the Secretary of State's office and reinstate your license. And there's a reinstatement fee, for instance. In fact, in my video, I even said if the guy's paid that, I'll reimburse him for it because I feel sorry for the guy. But quite frankly, the mistake wasn't a clerical error on the part of the Secretary of State's office from what we could see. Well, here's the crazy part. There was a hearing today. And of course, if you're watching this tomorrow, the hearing is yesterday. But I don't need to go into that for you. However, I watched the hearing. And at the hearing, Judge J. Cedric Simpson, who's a very good judge, stopped the parties at one point because he had the guy in front of him now who has an attorney with him and the prosecutor and the police officer who wrote the ticket were all present in the courtroom. And the judge goes, I have to talk about something here for a split second, and you've got to understand this. He goes, there's been so much in the news lately that I feel the need to set the record straight. And he goes, the first thing everyone needs to know, he goes, the defendant apparently has never had a driver's license. Ever. Not in Michigan, not in any other state. This man before us has never had a driver's license. Now, of course, that's news to all of us because we were always told that his license had been suspended and that he had done everything to get it reinstated, but clerical errors were made. And they weren't clerical errors. He never had a license. Now, you might say, but Steve, his license was suspended. How do you suspend a license that's non-existent? Oh, well, people without licenses can have their driving privileges revoked. And whether you have a license or not, that'll go on your record. So if he were to go and say, I want a driver's license, they go, oh, you've got a problem here. Your right to drive has been suspended. You got to go get that taken care of before you get a license. So apparently this guy has never had a license, and the judge took a little bit of exception to how the story's been spun because in the news, people are now blaming the Secretary of State's office, the Saginaw courts, where the friend of the court was that had his license suspended in the first place, and all kinds of other things. And everyone's going, it's clerical errors. The state screwed up. This guy is just an innocent guy who got caught up in the system. When, in fact, it turns out that he's never had a license. Now, something else was in the story that I didn't talk too much about, but Judge Simpson noticed it. And that is when somebody asked him, why didn't you get your license fixed? Because it turns out that the driving while license suspended now, that ticket was given to him back in October. Here we are, quite a bit later than October, the following year, and he still hasn't gotten his license taken care of. And he told somebody that he was laid up because he'd been in an accident, he was injured, he had some kind of physical ailment. He was laid up. And Judge Simpson, in a dramatic move, and I watched him do it, asked the defendant, he goes, do you know where you were? I believe it was December 28th of last year, which was 2 months after he got the ticket for driving while license suspended. And he said, well, I was laid up. And Judge Simpson goes, no, you were at the Secretary of State's office renewing your state ID. And we know that because your state ID was renewed on that day by you. And it turns out that in Michigan, you can only get a state ID if you don't have a driver's license, which means that a couple parts of his story have now just fallen apart horribly. And he would have to know he's never had a driver's license because he's getting a state ID, and apparently he's had a state ID, and he's renewed it every single time going back to when he was a teenager. Okay? I'm not exactly sure the exact year, but I know that Judge Simpson made a reference at least to 19, okay? And so he says, you can't have a driver's license and a state ID. So if you've been getting these state IDs every single year, you should know you have got a driver's license. So this bit about, my driver's license got suspended and I would have gotten it reinstated if I wasn't laid up and this clerk hadn't made a mistake. That's all out the window. So then the defendant, the driver here, had a very, very good attorney with him in court at today's hearing. And she said, well, Your Honor, we're just here to try to straighten this out now. So maybe we can somehow kind of start over. I'm paraphrasing here. She said, because, my client didn't start all this hoopla. She used that word. Caught up in the hoopla. He didn't start this. Okay, he's part of it, but he didn't start it. He didn't cause it. So can we get started on trying to fix this mess? And the judge said, well, we have one other problem. And she goes, what's that? And he goes, he has another outstanding warrant from someplace else for driving while license suspended, which predates this one. It's an outstanding warrant for which we have to take him into custody right now. So at the end of the hearing, they take him into custody on that other outstanding warrant. And so before that happened, though, and this is why I love Judge Simpson. Judge Simpson wanted to set the record straight, and he was clearly bothered by what was going on here with how this story got spun to where it was a clerical error that caused this guy to get caught up in this mess, and he's just an innocent guy who took care of his problems, and now they won't give him his driver's license back. Judge Simpson goes, we have to set a court date for this. And the guy's attorney says, well, Your Honor, my client is taking steps right now to get his driver's license, which that means that he's going to get all of these other things taken care of. Then he's going to go in and do what he's got to do to get the permit to drive. He's going to do the probationary period of time driving on a permit. Then he's going to apply for a driver's license, and then he'll have a driver's license finally. And the judge said, how much time do you need for that? And they decided on a date in August of this year. If everything goes according to plan, this man will be back in front of Judge Simpson on the driving while license suspended charge. But he should at that point be able to hold up and say, Your Honor, but I've got my driver's license. So now let's deal with this ticket that I got, but know going forward that I've got a driver's license. And so Judge Simpson wasn't out to hurt this guy. Judge Simpson was a little steamed, and I don't blame him, because a lot of people were saying that he had reacted incorrectly when he just so willy-nilly threw this guy in jail because he revoked the guy's bond and said, I want this guy to report to jail tonight, based on the fact that he had seen him driving. And as I pointed out in one of my many videos on the topic, I had said, the guy says, I had to take my wife to the doctor for a medical emergency, and my driver's license had been suspended, but it should have been reinstated by now. Well, if those two statements had been true, I said, they were decent arguments. He could have raised them, but he didn't. So the judge said, are you driving right now? And he said, yes. Judge is clearly a little befuddled by that. But the man did not say, my wife is having a medical emergency and my license shouldn't be suspended. Those were things that apparently got said later to the press, and the press picked it up and ran with it, and that's where we are today. So I'm sorry I'm doing another video about this. And at the end of one of my videos, I said publicly, if that guy wants me to, I'll reimburse him for the reinstatement fee to get his license reinstated, because even though I don't owe him the money, here I am doing videos about him, so why not? Now, here's the thing. I was contacted by a reporter for a major news outlet in Michigan this morning, before any of this broke. And the reporter said, Steve, that's such a generous offer. I talked to this guy quite a bit. Want me to pass it along to him? I said, absolutely, pass it along to him. I got a note from that same reporter at the end of the hearing who said, Steve, there have been some updates. You might want to follow up. And I said, okay, thank you. But I mean, I already knew because I'd watched the hearing. But you might say, Steve, then you can withdraw your offer, right? No, I'm a man of my word. I said, if he pays a reinstatement fee, I'll reimburse him for it. Actually, I said, if he had paid one. But I'm willing to do it going forward because I honestly think that the guy right now is trying to straighten this out. He didn't ask for all of the hoopla, as his attorney calls it. And the reinstatement fee is $1.25. It's not the worst thing I've ever paid out on a bit of a thing on this channel. I think I once sent $150 to a cat rescue, but that's another story altogether. So there's that, but unfortunately, it turns out that pretty much everyone was wrong on this, but it's understandable. I was the one who said that if you get your license unsuspended by whoever suspended it, whether it's a court, friend of the court, whoever it might be, you still got to go to the Secretary of State's office and get your license reinstated. Now, I was saying that based on the fact that I thought the guy had a license. But again, this is information we know now. Hindsight is 2020. So there you go. This, of course, is the case that may never die. And for those of you who don't know, I've got another channel called The Vault, Steve Lehto Vault. And I shot a video that is tangential to this topic that will go up Friday at 7 o'clock. That will be my last video. Let that be your last battlefield. No, that'll be my last video on this topic. I promise you. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. When faced with a large project, remember you move a mountain one stone at a time.